lived in a small town. It was 2,000 people in Canada. Little river that went through it, and we swam in a lot of water around. Niagara Falls was about 4 or 5 miles away, the Niagara Falls. And so, I've always sort of loved the water, possibly as a result of that, and that's manifested itself, obviously, in my work. What finally attracted me to film in such a definitive way was it was the only place I could reconcile the need to tell stories and to work in a visual art medium and the desire to understand things at a technological level, and my fascination with engineering and technology. I watched a couple of really bad directors work, and I saw how they completely botched it up and missed the visual opportunities of the scene when we had put things in front of them as opportunities, set pieces, props, and so on. And they had these great actors to work with, and they just blew it. And there was a moment where I said, I may not be very good at this, but I know I'm better than that guy. And that was kind of a critical moment, because when you realize that you can at least be better than somebody else who's already doing it, then you can visualize yourself doing the job. There were several light bulbs at several different times, and the first one was when I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey for the first time. And the light bulb there was, a movie can be more than just telling a story. It can be a piece of art. It can be something that has a profound impact on your imagination, on your appreciation of how music works with the images and so on. It sort of just blew the doors off the whole thing for me, and at the age of 14, and I started thinking about film in a completely different way and got fascinated by it. The next light bulb was really just the one that says, just do it. Just pick up a camera and start shooting something. Don't wait to be asked, because nobody's going to ask you. And don't wait for the perfect conditions, because they'll never be perfect. It's a little bit like having a child. If you wait until the right time to have a child, you'll die childless. And I think filmmaking is very much the same thing. You just have to take the plunge and just start shooting something. Even if it's bad, you can always hide it, but you will have learned something. A lot of people ask me, what's the best advice to someone who wants to be a director? And the answer I give is very simple. Be a director. Pick up a camera, shoot something, no matter how small, no matter how cheesy, no matter whether your friends and your sister star in it. Put your name on it as director. Now you're a director. Everything after that, you're just negotiating your budget and your fee. So it's a state of mind, is really the point. Once you commit yourself to do it, the thing that is exciting about filmmaking is to think back to the moment in time right before you had the idea, and think about that at the moment that you're sitting or standing on the set, and there are thousands of people around, and they've built this huge set, and there are all these actors, and there's all this energy and all this focus, and realize that it's all in the service of something that was made up out of whole cloth. That's fun. That's what an architect must feel like when they drive down the street and they look up and see a building that they designed. It's something that you imagined made tangible. I would say that my father was completely unsupportive in any way, shape, or form, and was really sort of just sharpening his knives, waiting for me to fail so that he could say, aha, I was right, you should have gone into engineering. And it was always this sort of attitude of, well, one of these days you'll get a real job, this film thing, will pass as a fad. And so there was zero support there. And I actually think that it made me angry enough that I had to succeed. I think if I had a soft, rosy, supportive kind of, it's good if you do it, but if it doesn't work out sort of thing, it would have been different. But it kind of made me mad. And I had to prove that I was right, that this was the right thing to be doing, and I think it made me mad enough to get good. Titanic was in some ways the roughest project that I've ever been involved with, and what saw me through on that was that I had a relationship with the people who were quite rightly panicking, but they never completely panicked because they knew who I was, and we always treated each other with a kind of a respect. And I always did what I think was the right or ethical thing throughout that, even though it was costing me millions of dollars personally, right out of my pocket. To do it, I felt I had to do it, or they would never trust me again on another film. And I think that that's ultimately the most important currency that you reap from any situation. Titanic was a situation where I felt, I think, pretty much like the officer felt on the bridge of the ship. I could see the iceberg coming far away. But as hard as I turned that wheel, there was just too much mass, too much inertia, and there was nothing I could do. But I still had to play it through. There was no way to get off. And so then, you're in this kind of situation where you feel quite doomed, and yet you still have to play by your own ethical standards, no matter where it takes you, and ultimately that was the salvation, because I think if I hadn't done that, they might have panicked, they might have pulled the plug, things might have been very different, the whole thing might have crashed and burned, but it didn't. We held on. We missed the iceberg by that much. As a Canadian, the American dream had a very negative and pejorative connotation when I was growing up, because it was this kind of cultural imperialism. I grew up in a border town on the other side of the border in Niagara Falls, Canada, and but since I moved to the United States at the age of 17, I actually feel very much like I'm probably in my basic genetic nature much more American than Canadian, because I really believe in a lot of the, I believe strongly in a lot of the traditional values of this country in terms of respecting individuals' rights, the rights to the freedom of speech, and a lot of the things that are in the basic fabric of this country.